It's time for the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin. Join the Salty Dog and his captain, Ted Yoho. Search for the Ward Scott Files on Facebook, Vimeo, and over 30 audio platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Now here's your host, the Salty Dog, John Martin.
Well, good morning and welcome to our pirate podcast here, featuring yours truly, the host, John Martin, the old Salty Dog, and from parts unknown, worldwide traveler, my dear friend and captain of our pirate ship, Ted Yoho. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, John and Zach, and it's great to be back. It's great to have audio service and the internet service. Apologize for Monday. I am in Bulgaria. As you can see, we're going down the river, the Danube, and going into Bucharest. Or no, not Bucharest. The next stop on our Budapest.
Budapest.
No, Bucharest.
Bucharest.
Yeah, we're in Budapest.
Well, as long as the captain knows where you are, I guess you'll be all right, man.
That's right. Well, I left
go ahead,
my assistant captain up there.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, as long as Caroline's running the show, you'll be all right.
Yeah, that's right.
Before we get into some pretty serious news, just wanted to, because we always talk about our beloved Gators, but we had a bunch of Gators at the White House yesterday. I don't know if you saw that or not, but our national championship men's basketball team was at the White House yesterday.
They sure were, and it was great to see that. It's great to have the Gator Nation represented in our White House with the president, and a great
the
event.
#1 Floridian now, Donald Trump.
That's right. Free state of Florida.
Absolutely. Well, that's a pretty cool picture, man. The chin, he's actually coming back now, they say. He was going to go in the NBA and changed his mind and even took his name out of the transfer portal. So he's going to be back wearing the old orange and blue next year. And that's great. Well, we start the show with some really great positive stuff, but we have to talk about something really sad and tragic. And, you know, Ted, you heard me many times before. Every now and then something will happen that really just hits me and irks me and pisses me off. And I've got the whole range of emotions on this story. And that's about the brutal assassination of that wonderful young couple, those Israeli diplomats, a couple of days ago in D.C. It's just gut-wrenching, and I want to talk about some of the implications of it and everything else. But let me
I think it needs to be talked about.
Thing in case people don't know what I'm talking about. They'd have to be under a rock. But a 31-year-old Illinois man, which we're not going to talk much about him, has been charged with 2 counts of murder after opening fire 21 times on a young couple exiting an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum in D.C. And FBI officials are calling it an act of terror. It is nothing less than that. And I think we've got a picture of the young couple, but what were your initial thoughts, Ted, when you heard about this?
It's definitely a hate crime. I mean, it's horrific what happened. And the people that do these things they're just misguided. They're following a wrong ideology. They're following an ideology, of hatred. And you see it on the left, and you're going to show that response from one of the Democratic senators or congressmen from Minnesota. And I think that's the epitome of that. They have no remorse. They don't want to talk about it. And it's a losing argument, and it's hatred. It's no room in this nation.
Yeah. Well, getting back to the story, the details itself, the pair of this couple who were supposedly going to get engaged within the next week or so, going back to Israel, were staff members with the Israeli embassy who were about to get engaged, attending a Jewish conference of an organization called the American Jewish Committee when they were gunned down in the horrific attack. Now, here's the ironic part of all this, I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but they were at this event sponsored by the American Jewish Committee, and the purpose of the event was to discuss how you get humanitarian aid into Gaza. So they were
into
actually
Gaza.
talking about trying to help the people, regardless of their politics, in Gaza, and they were gunned down for their trouble.
They sure were. I mean, again, here you have people, and you think of the tragedy that happened in Israel when the Palestinians and Hamas attacked the Israelis. Think of the horrificness of that. I don't want to go into that because we've hashed that out. And then you have a young Jewish couple that is going in to get aid to the refugees there, helping the country that this guy says free Palestine. And you know, there is no room in society for people like this. A civil society needs to eliminate these people and get them off the street just as quick as they can. Let them go through due process. Let them have their day in court, and then get them out of here.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, this type of thing was very predictable. I mean, not necessarily this particular couple, but the fact that innocent people were potentially going to be gunned down on the streets of our city, or one of our cities, our nation's capital of all places.
Nation's capital, yeah.
Yeah, and that this anti-Semitism was going to lead to this. I unfortunately, it's very predictable, and it probably isn't the first one. But I want to play this video, and this is Ted Deutsch. He's a former congressman, I do believe, from Florida.
Yeah, he's from West Palm Beach. I used to serve with him, and Ted's he and I are agreed politically quite a bit, but he is a very straight shooter, and he's an honest broker.
Yeah, he appeared on CNN not too long after all this, the next morning after all this happened. And I want to play just a brief snippet of this video. I would encourage people to watch the whole thing because he it was amazing, and he went through the gamut of emotions. But he tells
sure
you
did.
pretty much like it is. And as I say, unfortunately, this was far too predictable. Let's play Mr. Deutsch, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Night was a horrific tragedy. What happened last night is a reminder that that words have consequences. It's a reminder that anti-Semitism left unchecked can turn violent. And when, quite frankly, Kate, when people dress like terrorists, use the slogans of terrorists, and think that there won't be these kinds of consequences. Last night reminds us why it's so important for us to fight back against anti-Semitism and the kind of rhetoric, the kind of vicious anti-Semitic, anti-Israel rhetoric that puts people's lives at risk. And that last night, horrifically, actually took two incredible people from our earth. Sarah and Yaron are people that I knew, people that AJC worked very closely with. Yaron is Israeli.
Well, like this gentleman said, you allow this anti-Semitism to go on. You allow this type of stuff at the college campuses and, in the streets, and basically holding signs for supporting a terrorist group, Hamas, which no one really denies that they're a terrorist organization. And the fact that some idiot like this guy would take up arms and shoot this innocent couple, I'm surprised it hadn't happened sooner. And it certainly could happen again. And it's just a shame, but no one's really been speaking out about this, or at least only one side has. And what are your thoughts about all that, Ted?
Well, John, this has been happening. I mean, it's not as horrific as this one, but if you go back to San Bernardino, when those people went into the nightclub over there and they shot up, killed a lot of Jewish people. It's happened in Pennsylvania where they attacked a Jewish synagogue. It's happened over and over again, and these things are starting to build up, and that's what I see. It's building up, and the rhetoric seems to be, the volume is turned up. I mean, this guy says, I mean, he wasn't shy about it. He was there. He intentionally meant to kill him. I mean, to put 21 shots in here. They said the young lady was trying to crawl away, and he shot her more times. I mean, this guy's an animal, and the message that they're sending is hate Jews, let's kill the Jews. And again, this has no place in a civil society. And I'm trying to find the article I sent you where it talked about what kind of group he was attached to. And I'll find it here. So you go on.
Yeah, well,
You
you
continue on.
mentioned several of these other things, and I mean, it's all interconnected. Even right here in Florida, we had a mass shooting where you had at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando a few
Right.
years ago, when which was Islamic fundamentalists that went in and shot at this gay nightclub. But yet you have people that are like queers for Palestine and stuff like that going out there when they wouldn't survive 2 minutes in Gaza or some Islamic fundamentalist area. And
You think
it
Disney
just
ought to rethink that going to Saudi Arabia?
yeah, it's just unbelievable, man. But
Well, and if you go to back to
unfortunately,
Fort Hood,
go ahead.
That Fort Hood shooting, that guy was an Islamic general. He was a terrorist, and he yelled "Allah Akbar" before he went and started. I forget how many people he shot, like nine, out in Texas. And these things are starting to escalate. And the thing I see here, it's bolder. It seems like this was pretty bold, and it's kind of following the assassination of the CEO for United Healthcare.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you this, and I wasn't planning on even talking about it, but that same summer that the Pulse nightclub deal happened, I was actually working on a party boat, and I would come back every couple of days, and party boat being fishing boat, and I call it the Summer of Terror. And I was a victim of terrorism, Ted. I don't think I've ever told you that,
What
but
happened?
yeah, we were on the boat, and it was there was this two guys on there that they seemed a bit odd to start with, but the next morning, and I had talked to them, and the next morning we're anchored up and we're on a spot. And all of a sudden, I see this young guy come running around the corner, and I'm thinking people don't run on boats like this. And then I saw this other mate, big guy, running too, and I'm thinking, well, maybe they were in a fight. And then I see this big dude that I had met the night before coming around the
Uh-huh.
corner. He's got a fillet knife in his hand,
Wow.
and he's hollering out, Muhammad was right. Muhammad was right. And he was saying, God is
Holy
great, just like
mackerel.
that. And he put a knife to one of the patron's throat that I don't even think they even knew it because they were fishing. Anyway, make a long story short, we ended up, I had to basically get the guy cornered up on the bow. And we luckily had, as coincidence would have it, an off-duty county deputy on the boat, and an
Wow.
FDLE guy and a Marine all on the boat that were just vacationing, not related. And to make a long story short, they cornered this guy and took him down and had to tie him up on the bunk and call. And we got boarded later on by a joint task force on terror and everything. No
Sure.
one got hurt, but we actually had a Islamic terrorist on the fishing boat of all places.
Wow.
It's
Well, I found this piece I wanted to bring up because we're talking about this murderer who
Go ahead.
assassinated this young Jewish couple, um, and I want people to understand his rhetoric and who else sounds like this. And this was at a rally he was at, addressing the crowd on the behalf of the Party of Socialism and Liberation. He asked if they wanted a nation of cities dominated and occupied by massive corporations where only the rich and white can live, while the vast majority of us must live on the edges of the city and society, living deeper and deeper in poverty. Now, if that doesn't resonate, AOC and Bernie Sanders' message, this is where this guy comes from. He comes from that side. She and Sanders are out there espousing this stuff, rallying people, and there's no telling if this killer was brought into that, saying, "Yeah, they're right. We're going after these people."
Yeah,
It's
well,
a dangerous rhetoric.
it is, and like I said, unfortunately, it was very predictable that something like this would happen.
Yep.
But you know what's also sadly predictable, and that is the response from some of our Congress
Sure.
people. In this
Yeah.
case, Ilhan Omar. I wish I could
Yeah.
say I'm shocked, but I want to show you this. This was the next morning after the shooting when she was coming out of the Capitol, and she was asked to make a comment about the tragic event that happened. And let's hear what she had to say. Check it out.
Asked about the attack early this morning. This was her response. Roll it.
Congresswoman Omar, can I get your reaction to the shooting that happened in D.C. last night?
I'm going to go for now.
That's it. I'm going to go for now, and scurried off down the steps of the Capitol building. Are you comfortable with lawmakers like that in the United States Congress?
Absolutely not.
And there you have it. She literally was asked to make comment on it, and she says, I'm just going to go for now. You know, Ted, now I'm not expecting her necessarily to say anything real positive about any of this kind of stuff, but
Right.
there's some things that are just automatic. I mean, if your heart's in the right place, you would simply say it is a tragic event, and our thoughts and prayers or hearts go out to that couple.
Sure.
And walk off. You don't have to sit there and make a speech, but for her to basically just say, duck her head and say, I'm moving on, and think about all the things she has said and defended over time, you know where her
Sure.
heart is. I don't think it's a stretch to say that she supports this stuff.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, she would have denounced it if she had any semblance of civility in her. But I have been in a Foreign Affairs Committee hearing, and when they talked about Al Qaeda, she had a smile on her face, and she'd say Al Qaeda, and she'd get this smile because that was her hero. And so this guy falls right into that. This is somebody that she backs. And if you go up D.C. on their walls of the congressional office buildings, and you go by their office, you'll see all kinds of Post-its up there where people are praising her for anti-Israeli stance. And again, these people that are in government to lead this nation, they need to focus on America, and they need to keep that stuff out of it. I mean, that's just number one, that doesn't further America's agenda, and it's hate speech is what it is, and she needs to be held accountable.
Absolutely. Well, her
she's been
colleague,
censored for this kind of stuff before.
Rashid Tlaib, when on her first day in office, she took a Post-it note that said Palestine and stuck it over the map in her office that showed the state of Israel in effect, just blocking Israel off the map, which is what they really like. But she's not alone in this. I want to read a little snippet from a New York Post article. Pro-Hamas groups and other Iran-backed trolls hailed the barbaric murder of the two Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. Jewish Museum. A pro-Hamas Gaza Now media group in a statement, this is what they said about the killer. In a moment of courage, he decided to make his voice heard and boldly confront the killers, calling these two the assassinated killers. So the
ones that were trying to get aid there.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ted.
Well, the ones they assassinated, the killers, they called them, the ones that were trying to get aid to Gaza.
Yeah. Well, I want to keep going in this, and I don't want to go too long before we take a commercial break. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and we're going to pick up where we left off about this horrific assassination of these two young Israelis. If you'd like to be a sponsor of ours, look at the little tab below your screen there, and it says contact Freddie, call Freddie, and we'd love to have you. We appreciate everybody supporting us because, as I always say, Ted, not everybody can be in the fight, but everybody can support those of us that are. So we'll be
right back. They sure can, and we appreciate everybody that supports us.
Yeah, we'll be right back, and then we'll get into this.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Melvin Law,
the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators. The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company, Shoot GTR, On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Or that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All these poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back, and we're with my colleague and captain of our pirate ship, who is on a pirate ship or a ship in the Danube, aren't you? Are you on the Danube?
On the Danube in Bulgaria.
In Bulgaria, we have the captain of our ship, Ted Yoho.
Heading to Bucharest.
Bucharest, there you go. Well, when we went to break, we were talking about the horrific assassination, and that's what it was, of these two young Israeli basically ambassadors, diplomats, that were attending a function at a Jewish museum Wednesday night in D.C., and the purpose of the event was to talk about ways to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza, and they were gunned down. And when we left here, was talking about some pro-Hamas statements. I want to read this again. The pro-Hamas Gaza Now media group, in a statement talking about this guy that killed this young couple, said in a moment of courage, he decided to make his voice heard and boldly confront what they call the real killers, which are the young couple that was assassinated. So the question I have, Ted, is what should we do about this? I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about the investigation and the crime and punishment of this, but what can we do about this cancer that is now clearly in our country with this Islamic fundamentalism?
I think number one, start with the rule of law. Have this guy go in front of a court, a jury of his peers. Let him have his day in court. But more importantly, let the families of those two Jewish people that got killed, let their family have their day in court. And I hope this guy gets the death penalty. The other thing is, go back to where this fomented from. The Palestinians are the one that attacked the Jewish people. They brought this upon themselves. And so they need to go back and change their own country and fight for their own freedoms and get away from Hamas and the influence of Iran. The other thing is, you see what President Trump's doing. He is cracking down on the anti-Semitism in this country, but we have these liberal judges that are blocking this stuff. We have members of Congress that are blocking this stuff. These people should be held accountable too. And then this goes back to educating, motivating, and activating people to get them to register to vote, to get their friends to register to vote. And it was just like that that quote I read you about this kid saying he's espousing basically the same message that AOC and Bernie Sanders are putting out, that it's not your fault that you're suppressed in this country. It's the white people, it's the billionaires. And I'm telling you, we're over here in Europe. You look around all these castles, all these cities that have led to the great civilizations, they were all done by the billionaires of their time. You know, that's not ever going to change. And then you got to ask yourself, who creates the jobs? Is it the broke people, the poor people, or is it the people that are willing to take a risk and go into business? And so how do you hold these people accountable? rule of law. We have to be a nation of law, and this needs to be denounced. And the Democrat Party and the people like the Ilhan Omars and the Rashid Tlaibs, they need to come out and denounce this. Bernie Sanders and AOC need to denounce this. I don't know if they've made a comment on this. I'm sure Chuck Schumer has.
Yeah, well, I tell you, you bring up something, Ted, that we really hadn't talked really much about on the show, but I want to bring
That's why
it
I'm
up.
here, John.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's why we work together as a team. But this, you've heard for a few decades now about a two-state solution.
Yeah.
The reality is we had a two-state solution. Now, formally, no. But since I think 2009 or maybe even longer ago than that, Israel basically gave total autonomy to Gaza. They basically did, and they not only did they stay out of it for the most part. I'm not saying they didn't have clandestine watching it because they have to.
Right.
They gave people don't even know about this really, but Israel gave free water and electricity to Gaza for over 20 years now. And and they had a chance, and they voted Hamas in, and they let this terrorist group run them, and they blew it. Because think about this, Ted, and I don't mean to get too long on this, but had the people in Gaza, the Palestinians in Gaza, done more with their self-determination and had built the Gaza Strip up, and then let's say Israel decided to do something, they would be in a totally different situation, because the world would then come along and back them and say, why are you oppressing these people? Because they have done so much with that area. But the fact is, they not only did it go downhill from there, but they let these terrorists come in and run the place. And so the two-state solution, they blew it. There is no two states. There can be no two-state solution.
Well, it's interesting, and I agree with you. And if you go back to Yasser Arafat, he was a disciple of Mao Zedong. He was raised up in the communist system, and so he's a communist. Now, the other thing is they are anti-Jewish. And if you go to the chants of the Palestinian protests, all this stuff that happened probably 2 years ago, and it happened again, with the college students, from the sea to the river, from the river to the sea. That means no Jewish people there. So the Palestinians want all of that. Keep in mind what Iran says, that the Jewish nation does not have a right to exist. I went on a Codell over there, and we asked ERCOT, who was in charge of the Palestinians at the time, do the Jewish people have a right to exist? He would not answer the question. And so their goal has been to annihilate the Jewish population and civilization. And so I say all of that to lead on to what you said. If I understand this correctly, there have been 6 times that they've offered a two-state solution, and it's been voted down or rejected every time by the Palestinians and the Hamas. And as you said, the Palestinians elected Hamas, and they probably used the same voting machines that got Biden elected. And so they don't want a solution. They want the Jewish people annihilated. And then you have Iran, they want to eliminate them too. It's not up to us to decide this should be a two-state solution. It's up to the Jewish people and the Palestinian people that want liberty and freedom. And until they decide to do that and work together, they're never going to have it. I do know this when we were over there. The Palestinians that decided to work in Jerusalem and inside Israel, they loved it. They worked hand in hand right next to the Jewish people, and then they went home. And so it can be done, but it's people like Hamas and the leaders of that are keeping this fomented, and people like China, Russia, Iran, all these people that are fanning the flames of hatred. And then they come into our culture, in our nation, and they agitate this young dirtbag to go out and do these murders. That was definitely intentional. It was premeditated, and needs to come to an end.
Well, Ted, and I know you know this, but there's only one country in the Middle East right this minute that allows Muslims to vote.
Yeah, yeah.
Free elections, and actually allows Muslims to elect people to their, in this case, parliament. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I do.
It's Israel. It's the
Yeah.
only country in the Middle East that allows Muslim citizens the right to vote in the state of Israel. It just is. And no one seems to ever talk about that.
They don't. And so it's just lopsided. And unfortunately, it's gone on for thousands of years. And, it's going to take a special kind of leader to change us. And, we'll see how it goes. But it's just a shame two people had to lose their lives to bring this up and get people aware of this.
Well, I asked what should we do, and part of me, I guess this is just the old Hawthorne country boy in me, Ted, but part of me wants to go old school on this kind of stuff because we have all kind of modern technology, we have all kind of intelligence and everything else, but I don't know if we actually have the will to take care of what needs to be. And some people may find this offensive. If they do, so be it. But I want to play a clip from one of my favorite movie/TV series ever. And this kind of shows you what, if I had my say, what would happen to this old boy that shot these young couple. Let's play that. We'll come right back and talk.
Put them on their horses.
Where's he going? Pick out a tree to hang you from, son.
Gus, how?
You know how it works, Jake. You ride with an outlaw, you die with an outlaw. I'm sorry you crossed the line.
I didn't see no line, Gus.
I love that scene, man. You got to love Robert Duvall and where he goes, where that kid, the young guy says, where's he going? I expect he's going to find a tree to hang you, son. Really, and I'm not saying this guy don't deserve his day in court, but really and truly, I mean, to me, there are certain crimes that there is no coming back from. There's no redemption.
For sure isn't.
It's not up to me as a human being. It's up to God to figure that out. But
it really is, and it's like General Schwarzkopf said. He goes. Somebody said, well, you're judging these people. He goes, no, that's God's job. My job is to arrange the meeting. And, this guy was caught red-handed. Does he need the trial? If we believe in our system. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you kind of faded out right when you said Schwarzkopf. It froze up. Say that again, Ted, for the audience.
General Schwarzkopf, somebody said, well, you're judging these people. And he goes, no, I'm not judging them. He goes, that's God's job. He goes, my job is to arrange the meeting.
Absolutely. Well, and I hope people will take this in the spirit that I want to present it in, or what my heart is. But my hope is that these two young people ultimately didn't die in vain. And what I mean by that is it going to be a wake-up call because there's some people, idiots out there, that there's just no wake-up call for them whatsoever. But there's no way to negotiate with these Islamic radicals. You just can't. Keep in mind, there are still, that we know of, 20, we hopefully alive, hostages somewhere in Gaza in tunnels being tortured and God knows what to them right this minute as we speak. You cannot negotiate with these people. It's not possible, really.
Well, keep in mind what Yasser Arafat was a communist, and it's are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going.
Well, and they wanted from the river to the sea. I mean, they want to annihilate them. So until you get rid of that kind of leadership in Palestine, they're never going to solve this. It's the Palestinian people need to say enough's enough and get them out of there. I mean, we've done this throughout history. When the population got fed up, they got rid of them.
Yeah, well, I want to play a snippet from the recent graduation this past week at Columbia University, where we know they've had all these problems. This is the current president of Columbia University talking about the events that have been happening there. And I want to play this, and we'll come back and talk about it.
I also say that I know many in our community today are mourning the absence of our graduate, Mahmoud Khalil. exactly what the world needs at this moment. Not simply because you happen to be graduates of the greatest institution in the world, that helps, of course.
That was the president of Columbia University. And she says she finds it in her heart or whatever to say that they miss Muhammad Khalil. Now,
Got to
this is the
remember him
guy,
because
Ted,
he
you
was
know this already.
exercising his free speech.
Right. This is the guy who's been leading events there that's currently being potentially his visa pulled and everything is sent out, who literally led chants about free Palestine the same way, probably as an inspiration to this guy that did this brutal killing. And here you have the president of Colombia saying, we miss this guy. For people like this, I don't know if there's any hope for.
Well, you got to wonder why this guy isn't over in Palestine rallying the citizens against the government of Palestine. Overthrow it. Do whatever you have to get a normal government in there that, you know, can live side by somebody that's never going to go away. I mean, Jewish people have been around here since the beginning of time, you know, and they've tried to get rid of them over and over again. It's just, again, until they decide to change it in Palestine, you're always going to have people to foment the hatred. And then they're used as a proxy group by Iran, by China, by Russia, by North Korea, Cuba, to cause that hatred over there. That'll keep that stirred up in the Middle East. And, you know, I think Trump, let's move on. And I think he's taken a strong stance, you know, to weaken Iran. And hopefully this will bring it to an end sooner than later.
Yeah. Well, one more thought on this Columbia president of the university there. See, and maybe I'm giving her too much credit here, Ted, but something tells me that in her heart of hearts, she's not a dumb person. She's lived the American dream, all of that kind of stuff, that she's got to know that what's happening is wrong. But she can't this is why I talk about, do we have the political will? Because you and I do. But if we can't motivate someone like her to just speak the truth, I don't know if we do have the will to actually overcome this, because here you have an intelligent person who's gone through the system of America and just cannot bring herself to condemn this stuff. I just don't get it.
Well, she's the interim president. And if that's her ideology and that's the way she feels, she passes that on to the faculty, or maybe she's responding to the faculty. Faculty are the ones teaching the students this kind of garbage. So you get what you reap what you sow. And I think Columbia University is reaping what they have sowed over the years. And there's a reason Trump's going after their funding. And I think it's the right thing for him to do.
Yeah, well, we saw that news broke late yesterday that they are basically not going to allow Harvard to have foreign students come in there now. So that's kind of interesting. It's going to have to swing a different way. But to me, and I hope people will understand this, I really believe it's us against them. And by us, I mean anybody who's not an Islamic fundamentalist. Because people tend to think that these people can be negotiated with. If you're not a bowing down Islamic fundamentalist, then you need to be put to the sword in their belief system. And I say all this to say, and I'll let you go here, Ted. Do you really believe, and I'm saying this to our audience, do you really believe that if Iran had a nuclear weapon, that they would hesitate to use it on Israel or America or anywhere else? Do you really believe that people who would do what they've been doing can be negotiated with? Because I don't. I do not believe they can be. And the president is right about it. You have to put on a certain show, but at the end of the day, if these Islamic fundamentalists could take the whole world out, they would.
Well, Islam can't coexist with other religions. I mean, it is the religion, and you've got a couple choices. You can convert and they'll let you live, or you can pay taxes to them and live on the sidelines. And if you can't do those two things, you're put to the sword, like you said. And so their form of religion, and we see it in this country in certain areas. We see it in Dearborn, Michigan. We see it in some areas in Tennessee. You're seeing it certainly in Arizona, that they live by Sharia law. So you can't have constitutional law subverted by Sharia law. If you're going to live in this country, you live by the Constitution. And if you don't like that, number one, you got a choice to move. You should never come here. But we are not going to bend our laws to accommodate yours, even if it's for your religious freedom, our principles. We can respect that, but you need to live within our space here in the United States of America.
Yeah, absolutely. But at least, and you mentioned it, Ted, at least we have the right leaders in the right place. We got Donald Trump in the White House, and we got Netanyahu in Israel. And together, if they can't solve it, it can't be solved. But what are your closing thoughts on this, Ted? And we'll move on to something else. As you can tell, it makes me pretty passionate.
No, I can see that, and I appreciate that. And I hope people are that passionate about it because, again, this goes to the leaders in our country. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris would have been in office? Number one, our borders would be open. We'd be flooded with that many more. It would probably double with what we saw under Biden. And then they would allow more of this on all the campuses. DEI would be everywhere. Wokeism would be everywhere. And then we have got to change the direction of our ship called America. And Trump is the person that needs to be there at this time. And that's why we have to stay engaged. And it's uncomfortable. We don't want to inconvenience ourselves, but success isn't built on convenience. It's built on inconvenience. And this is the time for us as Americans to be inconvenient and come together and pull us together as Americans and run these people out just so there's no space in here for you. If you want to adapt our laws, feel free to do it. But we will not allow what you're doing in our country anymore.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, I'm sure we'll be talking about this again in the not too distant future. God, I hope not, but
yeah, me too.
But I want to move on to something that just happened basically late yesterday or early yesterday morning, late the night before. And this is the Republican-led House passes Trump agenda bill by a single vote. And we're using a ABC template here, news article. After weeks of internal GOP wrangling, the Republican-led House early Thursday passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, critical to advancing President Donald Trump's tax and immigration agenda. What are your thoughts on this, Ted?
As Yogi Berra says, deja vu all over again, or whatever he said, something like that. It's Groundhog Days. It's great that it passed. It shows Mike Johnson can rally this through, although you said by one vote. But when you get looking into the details, it gets rid of the REINS Act. That's something Doug Collins, who's now the director of the VA, he and I were in Congress. We passed that in the House, but it got hung up in the Senate. Kat Kamix picked it up, tried to get it through in the last couple of Congresses. That got stripped out of it. And if you look at the things that they fought for, were putting work requirements back for Medicare, not Medicaid, Medicaid, not Medicare, and for food stamps. And these are the same requirements that Bill Clinton had under when Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House. Obama took those out. We had been trying to get them in the last, my 8 years. We tried to do it every year, and we couldn't get them in. And it's a joke when you look at it. But the crazy thing, John, is those don't kick in, the work requirements. It was going to be 2029, but when the Republicans got, I think it was 2026 or 2027. So the work requirements don't even kick in for a couple years. And it looks better on paper, like look at all these things we saved, but in the end, we're going to go up trillions of dollars more in debt. There has to be a whole different mindset up there. I'm glad they got this passed. Let's move on. The one good thing that we put more money into defense because we're going to need it because China is building up to take over the world.
Yeah, while you were talking, I thought about two things popped in my head. One of them is that, Republicans.
I thought I saw little bumps come out here.
Republicans, pushing grandma with the wheelchair off the cliff and all that because Republicans are killing people. Hakeem Jeffries literally said the other day that people will die because of what the Republicans have done.
Give me a break.
It's unbelievable.
Anyway, that's why I say it's Groundhog Days. These are the same arguments we heard when I was a freshman congressman in 2013 that I'm sure Cliff Stearns, the guy before me, had heard for the last 24 years when he was in there. Oh, you're robbing people. You don't like poor people. You don't like grandma. Yeah, it's garbage, and it doesn't do anything to solve the problem. And, Thomas Massey voted against it. Warren Davison voted against it. Two nice guys. I really like them. But it change anything. This all needed to be worked out in the beginning of the year. And let's get through this, and hopefully the next Congress, you'll have different leaderships that says we're going to cut this BS down and not do this anymore. Our country can't afford it, John. We're going to be broke here. We're spending over $3 billion a day in interest. And you saw what happened to our Moody's rating. That was supposed to be on the show Monday that I got blocked out of. And so, those are the things that are really crippling this nation, and they can do the kabuki theater and say, oh, we got this cut, we got that. But in reality, very few of those things will ever see it be enacted. And it's unfortunate.
Well, Ted, I know you're going to think I'm crazy when I say this, but I can't believe I'm about to say it. But
you're hard on yourself, John.
Yeah, think about this. How much more conservative would our country be right now if we simply went back to the Clinton years? You know what I mean? In other words, you see what I'm saying? In other words, think about where the Democratic Party is today compared to where they were when Bill Clinton was in the White House. It would be like a major shift to the right if we went back to the Clinton years. That's crazy, but it's true to a certain extent.
I think you're probably right. I don't think he could get elected today. It's just like John Kennedy couldn't get elected on a Democratic platform, and that's how far the left have strayed. They're not Democrats; they're Marxists, socialist Marxists going into communism. And we've got to get these things under control. The debt, China, borders, energy, and Trump's doing a good job on a lot of those things. But we're still adding to the deficit, and with the downgrading of Moody's, our interest rate will go up. And so we're going to be paying more because Congress can't work together to solve the problems of the nation. They become too polarized over you're taking money away from poor people, instead of saying we've got to change these programs because we're going broke and everybody's going to be broke.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One, first of all, I want to explain this to people very quickly because I saw a lot of people chiming in online asking about the tax on Social Security.
Yeah.
That's not in the bill, but the reason it's not in the bill is because, as I understand it, the way the Senate rules work, for there to be this, to avoid the filibuster, reconciliation, I believe.
Reconciliation.
They can't have that particular thing in there. It can come after the fact. So don't give up hope on that. It can't be in the bill. But do you think this is going to pass the Senate? And if yes, do you see any changes coming in it, or do you think it will ultimately be what we have now?
Yeah, you're definitely going to see some changes in there. Mike Lee was talking about it. He wants the REINS Act back in there. And the REINS Act is a good thing, but it really doesn't go far enough. It pulls back
Explain the REINS Act, because you mentioned it twice and our viewers may not.
The REINS Act is a bill. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but if it pulls back when a regulation comes out that goes on businesses and it affects them over $100 million, or that's back when I was in Congress, it may be $200 billion or $500 billion. When it affects them that much, I mean $1 million, I said billion. When it affects their industry that much, Congress gets the vote on it and say, no, you're not going to put this because it's too draconian or too expensive for the American citizens. And this is just something, it's to remove rules, regulations that are impeding business growth. And this is something, like I said, when I went in 2013, Doug Collins and I tried to get this passed. People tried to pass it before I got into Congress. Now, people like Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Kat Kamick, and maybe Rick Scott are trying to get it passed. And it's just one of those things that gets recycled but never gets solved. And this is the thing that I saw. It's a broken tire or a broken record up there in D.C. that nobody changes. They just keep playing it, and you hear this skip every now and then, and they just keep going on. And then the time runs out. They're going to go on August recess, and when they come back, they're going to be focused on campaigning. Send me your money because we're going broke, and the Democrats are ahead of us, and that's just the same chanting of the circus barker in the middle of the ring. So that's what the REINS Act is. It's a good idea, but we'll see.
Rein that spending in. Well, my biggest question about this all, Ted, I think that we had to get this passed, and I believed in President Trump. But my biggest question is, will we ever return to regular order, a regular budget process that goes, and we have
a balanced
budget, because that's what we got to get back to have any.
I agree with you. I've got some problems here with my internet connection. Regular order, yeah, they can get to that. Regular order, again, just to explain it for the people, is when you get your 12 appropriation bills out and passed in a timely manner. That goes into the budget, that goes into the appropriations, which they're voting on now. That has to be done by September. It can be done. It was done under Newt Gingrich. I don't think we never did that while we were there. But then you talk about the balanced budget. That was always a joke, because they said, well, this will balance in 5 years or 10 years. And, I've talked about that before, where, you're 3 years into it. Somebody like Steve Scalise will say, well, hey, can you vote for this, yo-ho? And I says, well, he goes, it'll balance in 7 years. I said, well, you told me that 3 years ago, so it should really balance in 4 years, if I'm doing my math right. And they just look at you like, well, you're not supposed to ask those questions. But on this bill here, there's some good things in there. But again, like I said, a lot of these things aren't going to be enacted in another 2026 to 2029. And so by then you're going to have a new Congress that can go back and change these things.
Yeah, and I guess people, if they're walking along a riverbank and there's a cliff over your head, watch out for grandma in a wheelchair, for some Republican pushing them over. Just duck.
Oh, you're so cynical there, John.
But we've only got about 5 minutes left in the show, and I want to run a few topics by you, Ted, and just get your thoughts on it. Did you, I don't know if you saw this, but Nancy Mace, Congresswoman, has moved to expel LaMonica McIver in the wake of the riot at the ICE facility. She's the one that was accused of body slamming ICE agents at the in New Jersey there. Any thoughts on that? Is that a good move? What do you think?
No, I think it is, but it's going to be very partisan, and it'll be that much more divide in there. But go back to when, like, AOC went in office, and whenever she went in there, and she's down at the ICE border yelling at him, screaming at him, cussing at him while the cameras are on. And then she does an interview right in their office, yelling at these people, berating them. All right, now move forward. So we go from that kind of outburst and disrespect for people that are wearing their uniform, and they're just doing their job. They're doing what the administration, who at the time was Obama, and then she wasn't under Obama, it was Trump, and she had the hatred for him. And now look at where we are now. You've got members of Congress assaulting ICE agents. So it's escalating, and this goes into what we're seeing with people like that killer that shot these two young Jewish people. The level of escalation is getting hotter, and it's becoming more violent. So yes, to answer your question, this lady would move to get her thrown out of Congress, or at minimum censored, kicked off all of her committees, and let her district deal with it. Of course, her district are the ones that sent her here, so she may be back, but there has to be some kind of consequence for the actions that she did. And I hope you're going to see it through the Department of Justice too, because that was a bodily assault on a police officer.
Well, one more quick thing, and then we'll go. Because the Democrats, they get these slogans, talking points, and their new one is, we just need to move forward. And that's especially used when they talk about anything from Biden's presidency, his incapacity and cancer and all that. I mean, this thing is crazy to think that he hadn't had a prostate. I think they're lying, but imagine that, since I think 2010 or some crazy 14 or something.
Yeah, I read that. I mean, give me a break. You're the president of the free world. you're supposed to have enough common sense to get those things checked on a regular basis. 10 years is not a regular basis, and I don't know. It's just a cover up. I mean, thank God he's out of here. We don't need to talk about him much. We need to talk about where we're heading and what people are going to run this country. I mean, again, you see the traction that AOC and Sanders has. You see this young guy espousing the same ideals, that it's the white people and the millionaires and the corporations that are suppressing all of us non-white people. Give me a break. Nobody is holding anybody back in this country, in America, unless it's yourself. You know, you've got more opportunity. I'm over here in Europe where all these countries were controlled by communists. And I sent you those pictures of 30 some years after communism, and they're paying 15% taxes on their wages. 15% taxes go into their retirement. 15% of their taxes go into their health care. That's 45%. On top of that, they're paying a 25% VAT tax. And they're telling you how communism, some of them are saying, well, communism wasn't that bad. Well, by God, go back to it. You know, they don't know what freedom and liberty are. And it's interesting because I asked several of the people, do you like life better under communism or under the democracy? Probably 90% of them said we hated communism. But this country hasn't progressed because they don't know how to, I don't think. But this is where the Democrats, the Marxist socialists want to take us to. And people need to wake up in this country because we're one election away from it. Sorry, that was longer than you wanted.
Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. And,
sure.
Please like what we're doing, share it far and wide. And, Ted will be back from his vacation, rested and tested and suntanned and everything else. But remember, it's Memorial Day weekend. I want people to enjoy themselves, have that hamburger. I know I am going to jump in the pool, all that kind of stuff. But remember, the only reason why we can do it is because of the sacrifices that were made.
Amen there. I can't add to that. God bless you, and God bless America. May he see fit to continue to bless our great nation.
Absolutely. Peace out.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.